Illinois taxpayers, just like everybody else in blue states, were promised something simple, like pay the tax and they're going to fix the roads. But today, a court ruling just confirmed what all of us knew already, I'm guessing. Hundreds of millions of dollars meant for transportation were quietly siphoned off and just spent somewhere else. Not on roads or bridges, not on infrastructure, that's for sure. And this isn't the first time this has happened. Gambling taxes, lottery money, and the tollways. All sold as solutions for schools and roads, folks. But so here's the question. At what point do taxpayers say this has been just enough? Because what happens next affects every family in Illinois and probably the country because they're just doing this everywhere. Let's get into it. My name is Tom. I'm with the Daily Beltway. I'm also a White House correspondent focused on how government decisions actually hit families where it hurts. And if you guys live in Illinois or any blue state, the story probably won't surprise you at all. But don't forget that we're a growing channel. Every like, comment, share, and subscription helps us keep holding politicians accountable. And if you're tired of being lied to about where your tax dollars go, make sure you're subscribed and share this report too. But CBS Chicago just confirmed what taxpayers have suspected for years, that hundreds of millions of dollars that were supposed to be locked away for roads and transportation were quietly spent on everything else. I want you guys to watch this. Check this out.
Cook County misspent hundreds of millions of dollars in funding for transportation. That is what we just learned in a circuit court judge that ruled
They just learned it, guys. Never had a suspicion of it.
This week, the judge ruled that the company's and the county's use of $243 million in tax revenue violated a part of the Illinois Constitution called the Safe Roads Amendment. Cook County argued it was allowed to use the money for things that enforce the rules of the road, like the sheriff, state's attorney, and circuit court clerk.
And once they dig into it, it's going to be vacations, it's going to be housing, it's going to go to illegal health care, it's going to go to everything else except to exactly where it's supposed to go. And I live in Illinois, folks, and this is a one-off before it. They would close the schools down in Chicago inside of black areas and tell the families that there wasn't enough money to keep that school open for the black children that lived there. They would close the school, make those kids go on bus rides for 50 minutes to a different suburb each day, 50 minutes each way. And then they would sit there and say they magically found millions of dollars to take those schools and turn them into housing units for the legal aliens. So they would disenfranchise the local residents that live inside of that area where the gambling money, the toll money, and all those things are supposed to go to provide for these schools for these underprivileged children living in Chicago, and then ship them out 50 minutes. Of course they're not going to go to school. Why would they want to? They lied about everything. And there's an open revolt in Chicago over that. But a Cook County judge ruled that officials violated the Illinois Constitution by diverting transportation funds into general government spending. And this wasn't a paperwork error. It wasn't confusion. It was a deliberate choice to ignore voter intent. And Illinois voters passed a Safe Roads Amendment because politicians couldn't be trusted. Of course they couldn't be. Gas taxes, registration fees, and transportation revenue were supposed to be in a locked box for roads, bridges, infrastructure. That's it. And schools, when the money was there. Instead, Cook County used that money for salaries, office operations, and budgets that had nothing to do with fixing the roads or the infrastructure. And while politicians shuffled money around, drivers kept dodging potholes that have destroyed my tires, along with many other people's suspensions, their alignments, everything. We deal with this every day living here. But here's a bigger issue. This isn't just about the roads. This is about the Illinois playbook. Gambling taxes were sold as money for schools. Lottery ticket sales were marketed as helping education. Tollways were supposed to fix highways and reduce congestion and then not have the tolls anymore. Yet none of that money ever goes 100% where it was promised, or even 20%. Meanwhile, property taxes keep skyrocketing. My property tax went up again this year. Shocker. Families pay some of the highest rates in the Republic, and what do they get in return? Roads that look like war zones? Iraq had better roads than Chicago does. And schools that parents just don't trust. My kids don't go to public school because of this. But more families are pulling their kids out of public schools because they're tired of bureaucratic failure and ideological priorities replacing education. They're paying higher taxes for systems they no longer use or believe in. I want to ask you guys this. If you're done believing tax promises, I want you to comment lockbox. And if you think Illinois politicians or blue state politicians will never stop raiding funds, I want you to comment slush. This is where it all should hopefully change. A judge just told Cook County that the lockbox actually means something, that taxpayer money is not optional. And this ruling sends a message that voter-approved funds cannot be treated like emergency cash drawers every time politicians overspend, which they do every single day. That's Democrats and Republicans. Anyways, whether they listen to this is another question entirely, because history tells us this. When caught, Illinois, politicians, they don't reform. They just shift the blame. They raise taxes somewhere else. They do something. And if you guys got value from this update, tap subscribe. My opinion is next. I put a whole bunch of my opinion in this because I live here and I deal with this stuff every single day. They lie. They've lied about everything. They want to import the illegal immigrants so they can have more congressional seats. And in order to have the illegal immigrants, they have to disenfranchise their voting base, which is the African American community inside of Chicago. Instead of, disenfranchising them in any other way, they took the schools from their children, is what they did. And then they justified it and told them, and then gaslit the entire community by telling them, oh, this is the Republicans' fault. They've had a supermajority in Illinois for decades. But anyways, this ruling matters because it confirms what taxpayers have been shouting for years, that government doesn't have a revenue problem, it has a spending and honesty problem. When voters approve taxes for roads, schools, or transportation, that money is not a suggestion. It's a literal freaking contract. Break that contract and the trust collapses. It's a law, guys. They should all go to jail for this. But Illinois families work hard. We pay some of the highest property taxes inside of the nation. We deserve safe roads, functioning schools, and accountability from our elected officials, regardless of party. Instead, we get diversions, excuses, and bureaucracy. And if leaders don't respect voter intent, voters must replace leaders. But guess what? It's all, probably rigged. This isn't left versus right. It's citizens versus a system that treats their money like a slush fund. Awareness is the first step to change. So share this to everybody you know that lives in a blue state or any state, because you know what? We need to fix it all, guys. Half of the money doesn't go where it's supposed to go anywhere in this country. Share the report. Stay alert. Stay aware. God bless.